I'll start by introducing myself and also one other person that's not with me today. But let me just start. If you haven't heard of Fat Pencil Studio, it's a company I started in 2004. At the time, we were mainly working on renderings for real estate developers, and the company has since evolved into doing visual stories for a variety of fairly technical clients, but not necessarily architects and real estate developers. More construction, more transportation, a lot of court cases. And I will show you some of those examples in a little while. I also want to introduce someone who's not here with me, Doug Ketterman. He is someone I met 2 years ago at this conference when it was in Vail. And Doug is a master designer of skate parks and extreme sports venues. So the reason we decided to collaborate on this presentation, and we gave this presentation about a month ago in Portland, is because we both realized that we love doing this live design process. And so he couldn't make it to Basecamp this time because he is finishing a degree in graphic arts, in visualization, and so he's got his finals this week, and he didn't feel like he could get out of that. But he's here in spirit. I wanted to show you a little bit of his work. This is some different stuff he did for a big stadium event. You can see some major ramps there, and he's one of the fastest modelers I know. I'm a little slower than him, so we allocated an additional half an hour for this. No, just kidding. All right, so let's get right into it. What is live design? If you are using SketchUp, you're probably having a live design experience by yourself, right? You see all the ideas come to life right in front of you. And the question is, are you doing this with your colleagues and your clients so they get to see it too? And I am curious to know, and this is going to require some hand raising. Are you ready? Who here already does live design with their clients and colleagues? Maybe about half. That's pretty good. So this is going to be some validation, hopefully, some more ammunition when you need to defend why you do this, and just inspiration for keeping at it. Who here is interested in doing it, but maybe a little concerned that it's going to feel like the boss is looking over your shoulder telling you what to do? Yeah, okay, that's good. Hopefully I can persuade you that it's not like that, and there's really good reasons to do this. Who here is hoping just to see me make a fool out of myself when I try to draw some crazy stuff? Oh, okay. I won't hold it against you. I'll laugh with you instead of, and we'll keep going. So let's talk a little bit about why is live design any different than the status quo in the design field. And what I will say is that there's typically an expertise gap between a designer and a stakeholder. And I'm saying stakeholder instead of client because oftentimes the person that is the decision maker is not necessarily the person that hired you. And that can make the expertise gap or sort of communications gap even wider. So here's what typically happens, right? You've got an idea somewhere, and the design happens inside of a black box. The designers do their work, and they come and give a big presentation. And the stakeholders or the decision makers who are seeing this finished product, they may not have had any input, or they may be partially interested but also see some real problems. There can be a communication gap. We often grouse about clients changing their minds, but I see that as just a byproduct of not great communication up front. And so that imperfect communication will lead to going back to the drawing board. If you hear the phrase, one step forward, two steps back, you can get a lot of that in the design process. So that's the status quo. Live design changes that by reducing the expertise gap and letting people participate in the design process. So that black box is opened up. There's more ideas coming in, there's more collaboration. The challenges are identified earlier in the process, and you can have continuous improvement. So even though it may seem like a lot of extra work to bring people in early in the project. You do achieve more efficiency because you're always moving toward the goal, which is completing the project with all your stakeholders on board with implementation. So, before we get any further with this, I just want to see if we can identify some examples of expertise gap. And I've got one to start, and I want you to be thinking of one that is relevant for your industry, because I know that we've got so many industries here represented. I'd just be interested in hearing some other examples. So the example I want to give is from the legal world, where we work on a lot of construction defect cases, construction claim cases. And you'll have an attorney or a team of attorneys that have a great deal of expertise in the law, and they might hire a forensic architect to go out and figure out what's wrong with the building and report back. And despite the fact that probably both of those professionals have a great deal of experience working in construction defect, there still is that expertise gap in people that are most used to dealing in words in the law and people that are very used to dealing with images and technical details of buildings. So having the graphics to help with that can make a big difference in allowing those two parties to collaborate more effectively. So, who's going to give me another example from their industry? You want to start here?
Sure. So we design a lot of theme parks and zoos and aquariums for clients all over the world, and China's really big right now. And there's a lot of developers in China that have never built a zoo or a theme park or a large attraction, and so as part of a theme park experience, there are lots and lots of specialties that they've never had to deal with before. Things like roller coasters and set design and show production and on a massive scale. And we've done a lot of those projects, and they've done none of them. And there's a huge gap that we find ourselves having to bridge to first teach them about that stuff and how to design those things before we ever have to start designing anything.
All right, so theme park specialties, expertise gap. Yeah. Let's get two more. Mark, pick one.
I've got a pretty booming voice, I probably could handle this. Interior design, I bring in, I literally show up to my clients with a 27-inch mat and set it up in their kitchen table and go through options for kitchen, for example, multiple layouts, options for islands and whatever. And it's an amazing tool when a couple sees it in real scale, real size, and zoom in and out. And then there's a moment at which they start becoming invested in the design, and their contributions become part of the design. And dancing through that is sometimes a wild ride, because it really shows up how good your model is set up.
Right.
And your ability to snap back and forth. So you try to anticipate certain things and don't overwhelm, but it allows the client to take a lot of risks that I don't think they normally would in terms of design expansion.
So interior design, there's products that you know well, and the client's just learning about them and seeing them is a huge difference.
Yeah,
okay, one more over here. Yes.
In architecture, clients don't understand floor plans because 2D dimension, look at the little thing with the swinging arm, the border circle on it, windows, that's LinkedIn. So that's a big communication gap. By the time you explain it to them, then you bring it into a model, all of a sudden lights come on.
So handling the abstraction to 2D doesn't work for most people. And let's do one more because we had one in green. Yeah, why don't you go ahead and give us your expertise.
I work for a company called Live Edge Design, and we make a lot of very high-end, custom, funky, organic shaped furniture. And it's really hard for people to visualize what this raw slab or this weird piece of driftwood is going to look like with this piece of furniture. So the clients will often come into the shop, pick out the piece of wood they want to make it out of, and if they have time, we have an image library, and I'll take the image of the slab and really quickly put together their table for them. And then instead of going a whole lot of emailing back and forth with drawings, they've got a rough idea of what it's going to look like right then and there. And it seals the deal so much faster.
Excellent. Thank you. So good examples. We could come up with lots more, I'm sure. What I want to do now is get into some details about the benefits that you achieve using a live design process. And I'll start with what I would call the benefit of convening or getting people together. On the left here, you're going to see a little cartoon of silos, and this is typical in larger organizations where you have just limits on people's time and location and differing expertise that really makes it seem like people are working in separate organizations, so they often, that will cause people to be excluded from the design process when really they need to be included. And with a live design process, you can actually combat that and achieve better collaboration and better communication. And you can, with using sort of mobile sharing tools, you can actually defeat the problem of people being separated by location. So getting people to the table to have these discussions, it's really important, and it can be done with a live design process. The second key benefit is just what you were referring to in terms of the abstractions of plans are very difficult for people who are outside of the core group on a project. Even if you have two different, two people that are architects, you might have someone else's project. It's going to take some time to really come up to speed on all those detailed drawings. Whereas working with the live design process and the 3D modeling, it's much easier to understand and get up to speed and understand from multiple perspectives what the project is all about. And also, it's more engaging. And this is really important because you'll know you have people's attention, which is not always the case when you're just seeing people on drawings. Did they read the email? Who knows? And even when you have people coming to the same meeting, if you're just doing the traditional thing and you've got drawings, you could have 5 people in a meeting and 4 of them walk out with different ideas of what exactly happened. So using a live design process, you're much more likely to get a common understanding and engagement that people are participating in the project. When it comes time to create ideas, one of the real problems with a traditional design process is you can have these ideas and concepts, different ideas and concepts ignored by kind of a one-way moderator or just a lack of vision on the part of the design team. And so, opening that up to different ideas is a huge benefit. I wrote down here, the real-time visualization of ideas can spur the kind of collaboration and creativity that really offers some unique opportunities to go in perhaps a different direction than the design team might have thought, but can lead to really good results. Even obviously bad ideas are useful to visualize, and it's partly so that the full group can see why it doesn't work, and that process of having everybody see can sort of maybe validate the person who suggested the idea. At least they've been heard, and they realize that it's not just they've been dismissed out of hand. We can all see that this idea was considered and not chosen. So let's talk about number 4. This is perhaps where all the fireworks happen in a sort of status quo process. You've got the design. It comes out of the black box. There's this disconnect between the designer and the stakeholders. So that can lead to misunderstandings. It can lead to extra long revision cycles. Revision 12 gets emailed out, and you can get these diverging paths, which waste a lot of time and lead to confusion and often conflict. So this experience, and if you've been in the business world for quite a while, you've had plenty of these experiences, and it can breed mistrust. Whenever that expertise gap exists, you can have mistrust between a designer and the stakeholders. So the great thing about a live design process is that you're getting real-time revisions as part of that, early on in the process, and it's real clear what's possible and what's not possible. And that means faster decisions, more concepts that you can test, and when you do have a decision, you get broader stakeholder participation in that decision, which is really important when you get to this last area. The traditional option is key stakeholders and decision makers, they get to see the final design, or maybe what looks like the final design, even if it's not, perhaps before they've had an opportunity to give input, and that's not good. With live design, you have the first sort of early steps in the process, building this coalition of supporters. And that means you can not just have a lot of people excited about the process, but you also, because you've done this 3D visualization early on, you're able to create these compelling visuals using those graphics that have already been developed. And at this point, I'm going to switch gears a little bit and just offer a little bit of personal perspective on how I've come to really believe in this process. What you're looking at here is University of Oregon Lawrence Hall. This is where I was in grad school for architecture about 15 years ago. And here's a design space. This is where we were working away. And we would go and pin up our stuff for midterms and finals. And what I would hear among a lot of my fellow students, and even myself, is talking about here's how my building responds to this issue, or my design solution is this. And it kind of bugged me, because I feel like design is it's often a collaboration with others, and how can you own a design idea? And I felt like, the way people were talking about it, I can understand why you would do that after spending so many hours working on something, but it's not an idea you own. You're developing it with your peers and your professors, and you're learning. And so I really have come to believe, and I'll give you sort of two really key things that I've, in 10 years of professional practice, I've shaped the way I like to practice, and that is, I really believe design is a process and not a result. And it's less about what I create and more about how we can create something together. And because of that, it's really important, if you're going to go and be successful with a live design process, you have to lose any sense of ownership you might have. You certainly are going to guide the process. It's not like you're a CAD monkey in there. People are hiring you for your expertise, but you're also a guide, and that's important to know. And then the second thing, and this is particularly important for me as I've come to practice outside of the traditional architectural profession, is that design thinking is not just for designers. It's other professionals who might not be used to working in this way can realize a tremendous amount of value by applying design thinking for their project. So I'm going to show you 3 examples of how we have used design, live design, in 3 different industries, and then we can have a little break into the exercise. So, construction logistics. This is maybe typical of what I saw from contractors, who are coming to us for help. They might mark up an aerial photograph, and it's not clear what's happening here, but this is very clear. And not only is it clear just looking at the picture, but it's a model that can be used to develop the logistics approach. Transportation. If you're working on a stakeholder group, you might have a little spec sheet that comes out with a particular option, and then another one, and then another one, and pretty soon it's very difficult for the members of the public who are coming to these stakeholder advisory committee meetings to guide the selection of an approach for the transportation project. Like, everyone's confused and their minds are spinning. So having a model to really clearly show exactly what each of the options look like is important. And I'm going to show you these models in a minute, but I just want to get through what the three industries are. And then from the legal world, when you have a collision, there's oftentimes where you have good evidence for what happened. In some cases, this is a still from a video, so this collision was captured on camera. The experts can kind of think or guess about what might have happened or caused, but when you have a 3D model, we can actually put a camera in the driver's seat and be very clear about what they would have seen. And that's a whole nother level of understanding that can inform the case development. All right, so construction. This is an example of a model that we actually did a tutorial with this model online. So if you like what you see here, you can check on YouTube and see me talk about it for half an hour if you're not too tired of it after 2 minutes. But this is an example of what one of our clients would bring into an interview. So we developed this approach interactively with the project manager and the marketing team and the superintendent, try to understand all the issues, and then they can use the tabs on the top here of the model to use it, somewhat like a PowerPoint. They're talking over this as they have the nice animated transitions to make it look engaging. But if at any point there's a question, what kind of shoring are you using there? We can always zoom in and get a little closer look at that. Maybe they're going to ask, what kind of protection are you going to put in place so you don't fall in? Oh, well, we didn't put that in the model, but let's talk about it. And then it's right on the screen there, so everyone knows what's going on. So at each stage, I can talk about what the key issues are going to be. Here's the slab going up. They've got the sheathing showing up in blue, coming behind a few stories. And that's it. They have a nice presentation piece for the interview, but the real value was the time spent with their team figuring out exactly how they were going to approach the interview. All right, option 2, or model 2, is this traffic study. This was the case, we were brought in by the city of Portland and the streetscape designer to look at different alternatives for bike lanes on North Williams Avenue. And I think they thought we were going to have some opportunity to do some nice 3D pictures, but what became clear is that there were so many options that were thrown out that people were confused, and I advocated for, let's get this model in front of the stakeholder group live. And I actually had to go to a church in the evening with a few of the stakeholders and kind of sit down with them off, out of the public eye and show them how it could work. And once they did that, everybody was energized and they said, okay, we got to bring this to the full meeting. But the way this works is you can kind of move around to any of the intersections. We can look at it with different kinds of configurations. Here's the existing configuration with the bike lane and the bus that kind of merges in and out of the bike lane to drop off passengers, and the bikes that have to go around the bus, but there's a car right behind them that might hit them. So it was very hectic. And we looked at a variety of different options. You could have a sort of an expanded bike lane on the right side, but that might cause traffic to back up. On the left side, same issue. We looked at an option here where we had kind of a hybrid approach, where you still allow traffic to go in both lanes, so vehicle traffic to go in both lanes, but this would be more of a priority bicycle lane, and they had these diverters every block, so that mainly the cars using the left lane would be people that are parking or turning left. And that's ultimately the option that was chosen. But the great thing about something like this is if somebody had a question, what is it going to look like from the perspective of this bicycle rider, we can just drop the camera right there and look around and then pop back out and take a look at the intersection again. And when someone had a question about new development, because for example, there was a big store being planned here, and I said, well, we can put that store in the model. And so I did this, right? Popped up the store. That didn't take very long, but the reaction of the people in the room was like, whoa, you can do that? And sure, why not? But those people felt heard, they were engaged, and so that's the kind of reaction that I see often when doing this sort of process. One more, we're going to look at the bus here. This is a case from Philadelphia and a collision that occurred in the crosswalk between a bus and a pedestrian. Let's see here. Got to look at my. So there's where the collision was. But the question was, what did the driver see like 2.5 seconds earlier? And that's where we can go ahead and put ourselves right in the driver's seat and look around. You know, in theory, you could definitely clear that blind spot if you leaned really, really far, right? But that's a tall order. And so, this was we were able to create the model by using the security camera footage that were on 2 buildings. So we knew through photogrammetry where to place the bus and the pedestrian accurately. So it would be something that had foundation for testifying in court. And then once we had that, we could work with the other experts on the case to develop the theory for what happened, and then even do things like turn on the blind spot to show what blind spot looked like from that mirror at different points in that turn. I don't have it on all the time, do I? But like, what was the blind spot like when the bus was sitting at the stop versus what would it have been like if they just lowered the mirror 4 inches? And then you can see the difference there. And from the driver's seat, we can do the same thing. So here's that same location. You can just sort of see the head poking out there over the mirror. If you lower the mirror 4 inches, let's go ahead and do that. Big difference. So this was really helpful for the attorneys to know this information early on. It shaped their approach to the case. They knew they had an opportunity to pursue a products liability case as opposed to just a strict driver liability case. Any questions about any of these before I switch back to my, okay, in front, yeah.
Did you have to calculate the speed of, okay. Did you have to calculate or know the speed of the bus and the speed that the pedestrian was walking in order to get those views to work properly?
Calculating the speed would be a traditional way that the accident reconstructionist would work. They try to determine where the collision occurred, and then whatever evidence they had to figure out how fast the bus and pedestrian were moving, they would work backwards from that point of collision. In this case, because we had the security camera footage, we had a different source of information for placing the bus and pedestrian. And so what we did is I only placed the bus and the pedestrian where we could see them on the camera. And we didn't actually have to calculate velocity. Could have done that, certainly, based on knowing where the bus was at different times. Video footage is a great tool for that because you have essentially this series of images that's all time-stamped. And you can learn a lot from that. Other questions in the back, please?
So obviously there's not like a one-size-fits-all bus. So did you have to contact the city and figure out how to model the bus so that it was the exact same thing that actually hit the pedestrian, so that the blind spots were right and the window sizes were right and everything?
So question about the accuracy of the bus. What's common in court cases is they'll have an inspection of the actual vehicle that was that was involved in the collision. So that happened, and at this particular inspection, I attended that mainly just to get a look at the cockpit, take some photographs and some measurements. Additionally, there was a firm that was hired to do laser scanning, and they did laser scan the entire bus, which is another source for figuring out measurements. I wasn't concerned with the entire bus being 100% correct. I wanted the length and width and height to be correct, and I wanted everything that was in the field of view of the driver to be precise. So those were the things I was most interested in. This bus started out as a component that we downloaded from Form Fonts, and then we modified it based on that. Anything else before I move on? Okay. So let's talk about some tips for being successful with live design. Because it's different than what we're familiar with, with a traditional design where you're putting something out there and getting a critique. Live design is a little bit more like a performance than a critique. And so it is really important to prepare for a performance and not for a critique. Certainly there might be an opportunity to exchange ideas and whatnot, but in order to do well with the performance, you want to have a 3D model with the appropriate amount of detail for the stage that you're at in the design. And it needs to be lightweight and well organized so you can work with it in real time. That's the base model. And then you want to know, at least have an idea of what kinds of components might need to be brought in during the live design session and have those at the ready. And of course, there'll be things that you didn't anticipate and you need to just draw a placeholder for that, and that's fine. I don't think anyone's expecting you to pull a rabbit out of the hat for every single thing. And oftentimes, just like you saw with me drawing a rectangle for a store, it didn't look like a grocery store, but everybody knew what it was, and that was what was important. Question? No? Okay. So the second thing I want to talk about is how to host these sessions. And the first thing that's useful is having industry expertise that is relevant to the folks you're working with. And just like I showed, I showed Doug's work at the beginning, Doug Ketterman's work on skate parks. I couldn't do those live design sessions with his clients because I know nothing about skate parks. So they would start, talking about ramp angles, and I'm sure lots of other jargon that is, sounds like it would come out of a skateboarder's mouth. And I just wouldn't know how to respond. And I'm sure I could, do some things, but he's the right choice for that group of people, just like I might be a better choice to work with construction defect lawyers or whatnot. So that's the one thing, is having some good training in the industry, but also having a decent amount of 3D chops with whatever tool you choose to use, whether it's SketchUp or some other kind of tool that you're going to be working with. Knowing the shortcuts, having a clean user interface. You might be at your desk used to having lots of menus cluttered all over the place. You're not necessarily going to want to show that to everybody. And then in larger groups, it's useful to have a facilitator so that when the operator or the model is sitting there doing things, it's not like we all have to stare at the screen and just wait. So having someone to keep the conversation going and to move around and get feedback from more people, that can be a big help. And then the final thing that is often overlooked in these sessions is having some kind of a plan to document the outcome, and preferably a visual plan, not just an email, hey, it was a great session today, we decided X, Y, and Z. But maybe taking some screenshots and marking them up, or capturing on video and sending out portions of that. You can export images, set scenes while you're doing it, and export those images afterwards, and then get those out to the participants and take advantage of your ability to really provide those quickly. That's the unique advantage of working in this kind of process, is that you can get things out fast. So use your advantage. That's a good thing to do. All right. That was the introduction. And what I'd like to do now is do something that requires a little participation. I've got these cards. I'm going to hand them out. And on these cards is a link, which you could use later. You don't have to use it now. This link is, it points to a forum that I've used for the presentation we did previously. So if you have questions to follow up later that you'd like to, and I monitor and I get notifications on that forum. So you can always ask a question and I can answer it and we can get a conversation started. I'm going to just give these to you, and if you could just take one of these cards and then pass them back. You're going to moderate, so you don't need one, but go ahead and take a card and pass it back. On that card, you are going to see a role that you'll get to play in the simulation. And what we're going to be working with here, let's go ahead and switch over to that model. We're gonna start lay out a music festival, and this is in a park in Portland. I'll show you the model here in a second. Right here. Okay, let's put the trees back in. Okay, this is Portland, Oregon, North Park Blocks. This building here is a old U.S. government customs house. It's now a co-working space. A company called WeWork is in that space with lots of different offices for small companies. And so that's where we were hosting the presentation we did in Design Week in Portland. So that's why we have this particular location. The music festival is going to occur here outside the building or in the surrounding area. But I don't have any predetermined plan for what the music festival is going to be, how it's going to be laid out. I've got some stages, I've got some other components we can get in there. But what I'm going to rely on from the folks that are in the room here is to start, with ideas about how should we lay out this music festival. Think about, where do you want to put the stages? Where do you want to put the amenities? We've got tents. We've got lots of stuff. And one of the things you'll see with this model that the trees may be important to understand views and that sort of thing, but they also kind of block us a little bit from seeing everything. So I have the ability to just uncheck those 3D trees for now and put in some plan view trees in that one block. We can bring the 3D trees in later if there's a question about what could we see. And in terms of the role on your card, I want you to think about, what would your concerns and ideas be from the standpoint of a promoter, or from the standpoint of a local business owner, or from the standpoint of law enforcement / public safety, and bring those up. Let's figure out what we can do. So Mark, he's here in front. He's going to be the MC as I sort of start to try to bring the ideas to life as we're talking about here. And does anyone else have any questions about how this is going to work before we get started? Are you ready? All right.
So I need to make sure that somehow the streets are closed off.
Streets are closed off.
Oh, I have police and safety. I need to make sure the streets are blocked to vehicular traffic.
Figures, like we haven't even put anything on the street yet, and you're already asking us to close them.
Please.
All right, I've got a barricade here, so let's put that down and see what that looks like. What streets are you hoping to close off? Do you want to know where the stages are going to be first?
I want to close off the entire block.
The entire block.
So people can walk over the street or
Okay.
across the street wearing the vehicular traffic. Oh. Business owner's getting on my case. You're going to be a business owner.
No, I'm a permit official.
Okay.
So, do you have a permit for closing the streets or for this event?
I think I issued the permits.
Okay.
I'm not vendor, so the road should not be blocked.
The road should not be blocked?
Completely.
Completely.
Are the vendors part of the venue, or are they vendors that are already?
Well, you could do either one. You want to put some vendors in?
Well,
Where is the festival? Just in this block right here?
You tell me.
Do we get the next block right here? What else is around there? What are the other businesses? What's the other block?
So around there's a storefront, and so there's some storefront, retail, and restaurants on the ground floor, and there's some residential up above. And in these park blocks, there's a kids' playground here. There's a basketball court up here. There's places to sit and whatnot. I did not bring any pictures of it. I'm sorry about that. But we could actually, since we do have the magic of the internet. By the way, Google Street View, great live design tool. Let's go to WeWork Portland.
A comment about the Google Street Live View. It's a great way to end an argument.
Yeah.
Oh, that building's over there. It's got 3 windows in it. No, it doesn't. Bang. Very quickly ended.
So does that give you a sense for what this looks like?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so I'm a marketer for this, and those orange barricades are really ugly. Can you maybe drape something over them to maybe market the event?
Let me give you another option for those, okay? Let me see here. What about this kind of barricade here? And then if you want to drape something with your logo on top, right? That's something. How about that?
Yeah, that can work. Yeah, you just need to make sure we market it,
So what about putting a little something on? Okay.
Now we're getting somewhere, okay.
And I don't have any logos handy, but what I'll do is I'll just make it blue and you can remember. So there, your logo here, right?
Perfect, thank you.
Where do you want these barriers?
Well, where do they need to be blocking the road?
You can define the site for the concert first, is that?
Where's the stage?
Where is the stage?
Western music or rock and roll?
Oh, yeah, what's the music?
Who has input on the stage, where's the stage?
As another permit official.
God.
There's a lot of us here.
Another entity.
The stage needs to be at least 3 feet back from any curb so that people don't like step off into the snow.
Okay. Well, here's the stage. How about we get some guidance on where to put it?
Any other input on the stage?
Where are the trees? I was gonna throw it on the other side because there's more trees there.
Over here?
Yeah, but facing the other way.
Okay. What do you got over here?
As the third wheel in the permitting official's office. We need to see the engineering and the design parameters to know that this stage is safe for the performers, the community to be around, and what the weather parameters are, so we know if we have bad weather, when it's time to call a halt, get people out.
Okay.
I'm just assuming it's gonna be raining.
Safety of the stage is a concern. I don't
Okay.
know if we're tackling structural engineering here.
I don't know what I would draw for that.
Okay, well, it's metadata in the state.
Yeah.
I think it's the sort of thing that you acknowledge the request. You say,
Yeah.
you're going to have a certified structural engineer review it. You know, just the acknowledgement in a live exercise
Right.
is so important. You know, we found that if you acknowledge it not just verbally, but do something.
Right.
You know, check it off on a piece of paper, write it down.
So basically, we want submittals for the stage
Yeah, right.
and we can weather contingency plans. Yeah.
With an engineering stamp.
There you go.
There we go. Approved.
Hi, I'm on A4. I want to know if you're gonna affect my parking spot or my access to my house. I don't want any tree gone.
You don't want any what?
The tree's gone.
You want the trees gone?
No.
Oh, no trees gone. Okay. So let's see. Will this stage location be a problem for trees? Let's put on the 2D, the 3D trees here.
Ah, sweet.
Maybe move it over a little bit because we don't want to encroach on the root line too much. And what about parking? Where you want to know that you're still going to be able to drive to your house?
Yeah,
Okay. Where's your house?
like that.
Here? This one here?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is, do we need to close off this whole block? We might want to close off the block behind the stage, right?
Yeah, close off the block around the stage.
So maybe we put the, what if we put the barriers and still allow access to this building by moving them over here and here. What do you think about that? You can still get in your garage over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we put marketing on those two?
Probably.
Yeah.
As a performer, I want to know where my bus is gonna be parked.
Bus.
And the green room too. Where's the green room?
Where's my refreshments?
I'm going to have to grab a bus from this model. I don't have a tour bus in my.
What? It's in my contract.
Hey, I have an idea
Take it out of
for
your
the stage
litigation
location.
I'm a performer too. I'm the lead singer. But you know, if you put the stage, instead of sticking it in the park, that's valuable real estate for the people. why don't you take it and set it in front of that building, in the street?
Okay.
Should we put it in the middle of every street, just block it off, be a two-way stage, just use the whole front?
Good.
I was thinking on this, well, I mean, that could work too. But there's an open spot where there aren't any trees. If you pull out a little bit.
I've got a laser pointer. Would that help? Do you want the laser pointer?
Right in front of you.
Oh.
Oh, you got these trees here. I guess
Go on
that's
the
all.
other side.
Over here?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
There's this one tree here.
And it just provides shade.
But you want to move it over to this location here?
He wants it best where the voice can carry.
Are you thinking about that?
And you accommodate people across.
Yeah,
So-
that's better.
On the stage?
Wow, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm with the Department of Parks and Finance within it. Since we've made these changes so quickly, why is your fee so high?
Because we have to work with you afterwards. What about this stage location? How are we doing here? Is that?
Big trees.
You have to cut some trees.
Do you want to go back to the old location or?
Upward Street.
I think in the street it might be better.
We can line the other streets so the vendors can.
Yes.
That's
People
not
can
bad.
sit in the trees and listen.
That's good.
Okay. Yes. What else?
I'm still waiting on my bus.
Oh. All right. Let me get the bus.
I'm just kidding. But as a performer, I want to know how we're going to run power to the stage.
Ah.
And how big are the speakers that I'm going to be playing my lead guitar on?
Yeah. Where do
I
the
really want to blast some sound.
Where do the speakers go? Right here on the side of the stage. 'Cause that's.
Well, it's a tower, you know, it's 30 feet tall. Wow, this is rock and roll.
That's 30 feet.
I live in that building next door. It's gonna be
Wall of
too loud.
sound.
But it's a really good quality speaker, so you don't have to turn it up.
What about this?
Yeah, I put red lights on the top.
I'm the neighbor. I'd like to say I just love the idea of the rock and roll. And my wife and I live in the apartment just to the left of that on the 3rd floor. Except she's extremely pregnant. So I just want to be sure that the emergency vehicles can get to us while we're rocking and rolling with you guys.
All right. Let me locate your apartment and we'll get an emergency vehicle in there. Just put
Concerned about
this.
the safety of those towers, speaker towers.
That's a good question.
They're bolted
Put
together.
marketing on those towers?
Done. Hold on. Let me get this. Which 3rd floor apartment are you located at?
Left side. Oh, keep going, right, no, come to this direction, right there.
Right here?
Right below the skylight.
Right here.
Yeah, there's
Okay. So let's get a emergency vehicle in there. Helicopter, huh? Well, I could give you a.
Delivery truck, there was an ambulance.
There, it's a delivery truck. You can give birth in the truck.
Midwife. Could you add some porta potties into the?
Yes, that's a. Why do we not do this first? Where are we going to put the porta potties?
somewhere not below my window.
Maybe on Davis Street.
On Davis Street?
At the back of the venue, yeah.
You're gonna have to block off those streets.
And you need 15 for women and 2 for the guys.
Now you want me to color them differently too?
Yeah.
times 14. Uh-oh. I got to space them a little closer together. Hold on a second.
Mark's only got room for 100 people. All be in the bathroom at the same time.
All right. In reality, I think there's a little bit of sexism going on here.
Yeah.
And now you want to close off this street too, right?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to have this guy down here. All right, what else is going on? Give me some activity out there.
I'm a marketer, and we're responsible for the type of music. So we're suggesting we actually have both types of music, country and western.
Yeah, I needed like a Hank Williams icon or something like that.
This is ZZ Top in the warehouse.
Really?
Yeah. It's awesome. It's an awesome model. Space meat components and everything. Yeah,
Whoa.
it's fantastic. Man.
Magic ZZ Top.
Space. Put a space without you more easily. Yeah. There you go. Right there, right up top. There you go.
2D band.
Yep.
All right, let me get him on the stage. Hold on a second. Now, are you guys sure you use only one stage at this festival, or is there more than one stage?
It's a music festival or a concert?
Oh,
They're awesome.
this is the best thing we've done all day.
Google Hank Williams.
Hey, can we get a dynamic component that the guitar spins around too?
I'm looking at your traffic plan there, and that's great to have the areas blocked off, but I'm concerned about cars pulling down that street, needing to turn around and just getting a traffic pileup, so I think we need to maybe look at blocking the street a block further so people can take a left or right turn rather than have to pull a U-turn.
So let's look at that. Let's go to a top-down view here.
We still have concern from neighbors about walking the street.
So you're thinking right now we've got the street blocked here, but you're thinking people are going to pull down here and won't be able to turn around. So you'd like to move that up to here.
Yeah, leave it there and go up there.
So we got two barricades essentially.
Yeah.
So we're going to go and do this. So now how is she going to get in her apartment? Can we get in from this side? Well, you going to give her a free pass to the show too?
Single barricade with a safety officer.
Oh.
Someone to come in and park.
All right, so let me get a flagger here. Hold on a second. Let's go back to my components. Here's the flagger. Let's see how we're doing. Okay. And then have this guy kind of sitting around out here. Okay. What else?
We need some vendor tents.
Vendor tents. That's a good idea.
We need some food and drink and
I've got one tent. How many vendors are at this thing?
about
10 vendors? Where do they go?
I think in that green belt there.
Here?
There, yes.
Okay. So we'll have to work around these trees.
Maybe we have to have 5 on each side.
Okay.
We need rear guard
Yeah,
because they probably can't walk around and park.
Walk the street.
We're not gonna give them permits for that.
So let's look at them on the street and decide what we think. Is that better on the street?
You need to bring barricades down, I think that whole island barricaded.
This. Yeah, that's a good idea. Right over here? Okay. So that way we can fit more, right? And if we have more vendors, does that mean we can make more money?
Permit officer says that you still can't have it because the other side streets are blocked off.
I'm a marketer again, and I'd like to see about 1,000 people placed in there.
1,000.
I'd just like to know how many people we can fit in this space so that I know how much to charge and price out.
Lawn chairs.
Lawn chairs.
Yeah, on top of the vendor issue, I'm a little worried that the speakers are gonna blow up my merchandise later. So I need a spot to lock them up.
You're worried the speakers are going to blow over? What?
I think they're gonna blow my merchandise away.
Oh. So you want like a container? Yeah. Okay, hold on. I got a container. I'm doing pretty well in the anticipation area. Let me put these folks in the festival. Oh, I don't think I copied them though. People, copy, window, festival. We're gonna have them all in an orderly line for right now. I don't have the scatter working on this thing. That would be really helpful. Where is the container going to go? Near the vendors? Yeah. Okay. So here's a container. Is that okay? All right.
Sorry, so as a permit official, I have a permit pulled here for your liquor license. So I'd like to propose your tent on every corner of the park.
Okay. Do you want like a roped off garden area or what?
Actually, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yes.
And is that going to be in the street or in the park or?
In the street, in the corners of the closed off streets.
Okay.
As
So.
As a performer, could you put one close to the stage?
Well, we got.
We're in Colorado. Is there a pot tent?
Pot tent. Well, you could do. This is Portland, but we got the same thing going on, right? All right. Let's just.
That's Portland. That's right.
Let me just do this. What do we usually have? Like a 42-inch containment. We'll make it green for the pot area. And or maybe this is the beer garden should be the one near the bathrooms, right? All right. So you want one over near the stage too?
That's the private one for the expensive tickets. VIP.
Okay. In the back. Who else? Yeah, right there.
I'd like to say the rhythm guitarist for the band, I think we're way too popular for a stage that small.
We're playing acoustic that night.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Well, you gotta amplify this acoustic.
That's quite a stage. Now let's take a look at the trees, though. I hate the rain on the parade. How's that working for you? We got to look at the. So it's good there. What about if we back up to here?
Those people are drunk, they don't care.
You got the speakers on stage now, so.
Oh, I better move that, huh? Okay, turn off the trees.
And a street light.
That is a problem.
Yeah.
That one's not so easy to move. Why don't we move this?
There's your limit of your stage.
How about we go back to here?
There we go.
Okay. Now we need two ZZ Tops on stage at once.
Battle of the Bands.
I'm a marketer. I'm concerned. I don't really want to see all those porta potties. Maybe some more marketing behind it.
Oh. So how can we use the back of the porta potties for marketing, right? Let's see here. Right, because this is like another stage, and it's all porta potties. Well, what about the idea of another stage? Could we have another one over here?
Can you multiply those people by like 100 so we have 1,200 people? How much space do they take?
Let's see.
I mean, do we have space?
What do you think about another stage on this side? Let me just put it out there.
12 there?
They don't take up that much room with a place for people.
And then let's say,
They're sitting in chairs.
That's the acoustic stage.
You know, things.
all right, how about that? You know, we could play with it a little bit, but just in terms of how many people is there?
There are 12 across and how many?
Let's see here.
What
I've got.
area?
Rows do we have?
I've got. Why is it not telling me how many of these I have in the model? Isn't it usually tell you how many? 9. So there's 9 times. So there's 18 rows right now. Of 1, You think that's 12?
Yeah, it's
1, 2,
12.
3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So that's about 100 people or so?
Well, it's about 200, so that's not very many people.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it's not, you don't need 2 stages for 200 people. It's how many people can you fit?
Right.
So I would say 400. I think there's too much.
More people? Well, I have them pretty close together here. So maybe we need to pack them a little closer to the stage. And then maybe some on the stage for stage diving. And I don't have any people over here in the side area. Anyway, we could play with this, but let's keep going.
So with all these people, I'm concerned where, as a performer, where my sound check and lighting guys are going to be set up.
So that's a good idea. Where would you recommend they be placed?
Right in the middle.
Right in this area?
Yep.
Okay. So we're going to put it's usually like a platform, right? And do they need an umbrella of some kind?
Yeah, they need a tent.
Okay. Let's put a tent on top of that thing. Maybe make it a little bigger. Okay. What else?
Obviously, you're going to need to power up that stage with some pretty serious power, and I'm concerned about the general public getting into that power source.
So we're going to need a barricade for the power enclosure. Let's see if I got a generator. I do have a, let's see. I've got this mobile lighting thing that looks a lot like a generator. So why not just take that and delete the lights?
It's taking up a lot of your area.
We have our own private.
Oh, I got you.
There you go.
You'll need about 4.
4 of these? You're going to be pumping out, like, these are big speakers, though.
We're going to need one for the vendors, too.
Concerned about the tempered windows in the buildings around.
I'm a little concerned it's going to cause my wife to go into labor.
You might work that to your advantage.
I'd have to name the child Zizi.
Okay. Let's just say we've got another one of these on this side, just in case. What else? Are you guys getting tired?
Where are trash cans located?
Good question. I think that there's some in there right now, but those are installed. So we probably need additional temporary trash cans.
And recycling.
So let's just make that right now.
The police need 6 metal detectors at all of the points of entry.
All right. So here's our trash and recycling. Where do you want to put them? Vendors. And every corner. Oops. And let's see here. We'll put one on this corner over here. And we'll put them on the other corner. All right. And you want metal detectors? Where? You don't really want metal detectors, do you? All right.
At the main intersection where the ticket booths are.
Oh, we need ticket booths.
It's a free concert. Free concert, man. This is Portland. Oh.
We'll have it be 7 foot, offsets. All right, there's your metal detector. Do I have a red in here? We'll make it red. Okay. And this would be located at all the entry points. I think we might be getting toward the point it would be good to start to wrap up. Why don't we, is there anyone else who has a burning question that you want to add?
That van was a paramedics, right? For
Yeah.
overdoses and stuff.
No, it's for delivery.
Oh, for the baby delivery.
Yeah.
As a performer, I'm concerned about my people. I can get carried away.
No, it was fun, but like I have to say that there's a lot of good little bits of learning that we did there, like thinking about what's the perspective on the stage, trying to get a feel for how much when you start populating the space with people, what does that look like, and getting an idea of how many people this venue would hold. Defining where you're going to be able to do the vending, and then perhaps most importantly, making sure that we address the concerns of nearby residents who might be giving birth in the near future. Anything else that people would like to add? Just observations about the process? Yes.
At the beginning, you were mentioning some of the things that we should do in advance of a presentation like this, or a live design job like this. You could have, you had some layers already set up, or some components, groups, where like the trees, where you can pop them in and out. You could have done, you could do that with the crowd too.
Right.
You could do that with an array of tents. You could do that with beer gardens, and have all of that kind of stuff in advance, and it would speed up the process.
Right.
And the last thing is, I can definitely see having a moderator, having a facilitator, so that the model guy or gal isn't having to field all of the questions.
Right.
How helpful that would be.
And I will tell you, like you may have noticed, I was going into the layers a lot and turning things on and off. So I knew that I was going to have to turn the trees on and off. Had scenes set up for doing that, scene tab, that would have been faster. And in likelihood, in a project like this, I probably would have already had some kind of concept sketch from the promoters that would be an initial, jumping off point for where they kind of thought they wanted things. And then that makes it a lot faster because we don't have to sort of like scratch our heads about where things are going. We have a starting point, and then we can, go from there. I may have already had some, I might know the rules about at that municipality for what streets could be blocked off, and have a sort of a starting point there, and then move things as necessary. And I totally agree with you about, if I knew I was going to have to put a big crowd in there, having that available to pop on and off too would save a lot of time. Yes.
We find that what we lacked here was a program, right? So we would have already known the needs of the promoter and the safety of the people in the permitter. So we would have come into the meeting with 3 concepts, right? And what happens is that the community here latches on to one of them, but they take pieces of the other 2,
right,
and they merge them, and that's how they feel like they've gotten their input. And then you always have the one renegade who you just can't satisfy.
Yeah, when we did this exercise a month ago, they wanted to put the stage on the roof of this building. But then it's very easy to see that from the ground you can't actually see the performers. So they ended up with the stage in a tree. But that was interesting. We had to put fall protection. I agree about having additional concepts off the bat. It does add a lot of good ideas to the mix right there, and then you can start to mix and match based on what input you get from the stakeholders.
It just defines the limits for everybody in the room.
Right.
It really helps.
So for anyone, is there anyone here that has not done this before and maybe is a little bit more confident in trying it? Did I do my job? No, I guess do we do our jobs? Because I got tons of input from everybody. And I will tell you that I've been using SketchUp for a long time, but I am by no means super fast. There's probably 100 people at this conference that are faster than me, just because they have better shortcuts and more diligent about setting up their workflow and whatnot.
Know where ZZ Top is.
nowhere to find ZZ Top, right? But it still works, particularly if you have some help with a larger group to do the emceeing. It's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for. Oh, one more question in the back. Sorry. residential construction.
Or, I'm sorry, not residential presentation, you know, can it go beyond just showing a client different color to paint the party board siding and shapes? Or what sort of other applications would you recommend for the residential side of it?
I'm not an architect, so maybe there might be others in this room that can answer better. I mean, I for sure would say that you have an opportunity, even with early floor plans, to look at how you might, what perspectives you're going to have in different locations. If you're in the kitchen, where do you see? Is there an opportunity to punch out openings or to move walls a little bit so you can get the space feeling a little bit more proportional? And then later on, for sure, you can use it to trade out different ideas for finishes and furnishings and whatnot. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I would recommend going in with like 2 or 3 options already sort of there, so you've got all the components and all the elements ready to go, and you can start talking through the options. And then when they say, we don't want that cabinet over there, you can pick it up, you can move it. They say, we want this counter a little lower, you can pull that down. And so you're not starting from scratch, right? And you're also not relying on them to do the entire design, because they're hiring you to design it. So if you show up with 2 or 3 options, then that will get their gears flowing, especially if they're not designers by nature. They'll get their gears flowing, and then you can start talking through it with them.
And you want to be careful that the 3 options aren't so refined that they
Right.
feel like they've been closed out of the input.
Right.
You know.
All right, well, listen, we're going to end a few minutes early, but I can stick around with anyone that's got specific questions or wants to see something up here. I will be here, and I want to say thank you so much for sharing this with me.